Go ahead and call to order actually it says regular meeting on the agenda, but I think this is an emergency meeting. And okay, so it ends up however, but anyway, we'll call the meeting to order, and I appreciate everybody coming on short notice. Clearly things are happening quickly in the current environment, and
let the guests introduce themselves, huh?
Yeah, and I guess I'll go ahead and make opening comments. Obviously, the purpose of this meeting is to get together and see what we can do to offer some immediate and meaningful relief to a number of our small businesses that have been severely affected by the various constraints on commerce imposed by the pandemic, and both the combination of various conversations that I've had with local business owners and the effects on their business, and then in my own business, which happens to be the shopping center business, as I get dozens of requests for assistance from folks who are trying to figure out how they're going to survive. It occurred to me that at least in this particular place, I have an opportunity to hopefully be part of a solution for our local businesses, or at least assist them to some extent. And you know, it also, I think a lot of people that I do business with were tossing out that the federal government was offering SBA loans and that they were going to be giving out bags of money to all small businesses. And after digging a little, knowing personally what the truth is behind that, but also then doing a little bit of digging, realized that that's probably utter and complete nonsense as it relates to most of our small businesses. For one, I had a banker send me the application process for the disaster relief SBA loans, and the PowerPoint presentation to walk you through the application is 62 pages long. So if anybody wants a copy of it, you're welcome to have it. But my guess is that's going to be a painful process. And the reality is, and it's going to be a time-consuming process, and the reality is a lot of our small businesses are already out of cash. And they got that way because business slowed pretty dramatically before we ever hit the closures that were imposed on us. Then specifically with regard to the federal SBA loans, applicants must have a credit history that's acceptable to the SBA. The SBA must determine that the applicant has the ability to repay the SBA loan, which for me is kind of a questionable measure when you're talking about businesses whose revenues have gone to zero. I'm not sure what criteria they're going to use. And then maybe most importantly, any loan over $25,000 will require collateral, and I know most businesses, if they have equipment and inventory, those have already been loaned against for other loan facilities, and so there's really no collateral to offer, so you're maxed out at 25. But even if none of those things apply and you're able to get a material loan to assist your business, it is still debt. And in talking with some business owners, the last thing they need to do at this point in time in the midst of this crisis is layer on additional debt. And I'd thought about proposing this as a loan program, and then thought, no, that's really just going to add to their burden. And my biggest concern was that we're going to have some folks who run out of cash and run out of steam in the midst of this crisis, and then just don't have the financial, physical, or mental energy to come back, and we're going to lose them. And I think that would be an absolute tragedy. The small businesses in this community, I think here we often tend to speak of them as economic drivers, and that they are. They provide jobs, they provide sales tax revenue, but absolutely most importantly, they help bind our community together. And I think all of us have favorites, and they've been woven into the fabric of our lives on a daily basis, and they're incredibly important way beyond their economic impact. And I think if we, I think as an economic development corporation, our absolute first priority should be to retain and nurture our existing businesses, and that would be our highest priority at this time. And to be thinking grand thoughts about other people that we can attract to the community is kind of a fool's mission when we've got a lot of great businesses that we can save here if we spend a little time on this. So this was quickly cobbled together, admittedly, because I think time works against us. And, you know, if you've got a man drowning, you don't stand on the bank arguing about various techniques for saving him. You throw him a life raft or a life-saving device, and you get after it. You know, you don't worry about the details. And I think that's where I come to on this proposal, is that it's a fairly modest bridge for people, hopefully to get them through this next couple of months and give them the ability to pay bills that they already have, or to continue to pay key employees that they would otherwise let go and who may never come back. And so I think it's about speed, and I think it is about absolute minimal bureaucratic nonsense associated with this, because there's not a single one of our businesses that has not been impacted well beyond the magnitude of what we're going to be able to offer them at this point. And then finally, I feel pretty strongly that this may be, dependent upon the duration of this thing, be the first of one or two or three steps that we may be able to take. That it's an existential threat to our small business community, and I think we need to step up and be prepared to respond accordingly. So anyway, that was the background. So with that, I think Ronnie suggested that we go ahead and just maybe let some folks introduce themselves in the audience, just so we know who's here.
My name is Patrick McAndrew with True North Marine.
Welcome.
Don't breathe on it, though.
I'll try not to. My name is Doug Meisinger. I'm the president of KCDC, and Ronnie invited me to the meeting tonight.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm Matt Wiggins, president of the Water Board.
Billy Flanagan, Oakland. I'm John Sarah Vargas, Skippers.
Welcome. Welcome. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Keenan with Skippers as well.
You have to do it twice. Yeah.
I'm now infected. I'm Matthew with True North Marine.
Excellent. Thanks, Matthew. Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you all for coming. So
we also have the mayor and a council member.
And welcome, Amanda, council member and mayor. Thank you all for coming. So we're here specifically for discussion and possible action to approve an emergency business retention program under Section 501.101 of the Texas Local Government Code in response to the resolution by City Council declaring an emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the declaration of a state of disaster by the state of Texas. This had gone out as a program providing expenditures to businesses with 20 or fewer employees located within the city of Clear Lake Shores for the purposes of retaining primary jobs. The grant shall be available to pay up to 2 months' salaries, rent, utilities, and other normal operating expenses up to a maximum of $25,000. The total funding for the Emergency Business Retention Program shall be capped at $250,000. The Emergency Business Retention Program is described in more detail in the program summary attached to this agenda. And then we had set out some criteria. I will say that probably even before putting this forward as a formal motion, I don't know if I can amend it even pre-motion, but I had concluded that I really missed the mark on the 20 employees because I've already talked to a couple of businesses, quite specifically Skippers and Opus Grill. Opus has 38 employees, and the objective there was just to make sure that we weren't casting too wide a net and that it was targeted toward small businesses and not Target and Home Depot. So I don't know if there's what the...
You haven't made the motion yet,
So I would just, in fact, I'll go ahead and make the motion as I just read it, with the amendment to suggest that we move that 20 employees to 50 employees. So I'd like to make that motion and look for a second. Mike seconds it. So with that, we'll open it up for discussion. You know, there are a lot of considerations. I'll just go ahead and kind of start the conversation. Anybody's welcome to. Subsequent to the criteria that we described here on the program summary, which was that you needed to be able, well, A, submit an application to the city administrator prior to Friday, April the 3rd, and the thought here is we kind of need to get on with the rat killing pretty quickly. And we'll get the word out immediately to everyone. Then that we're not looking for, I would not advocate a highly complex or burdensome application process. I mean, I'm really thinking it can be done on the back of an envelope, where someone demonstrates a material and negative impact on their revenues, and an ability to provide some sort of a summary of the anticipated uses for the funds. I've gone back and thought about it more and thought, you know, that could be really just a 2019 operating statement or a January or February operating statement that would suggest that you have a monthly run rate that would support a $25,000 grant for a couple of months of operating expenses. And so that would seem to be pretty straightforward. If your operating expenses have only been $5,000 a month, then it's going to be difficult for us to provide a $25,000 grant. But clearly, if your run rate is 25 or greater, that's or $12,500 a month or greater, then you'd qualify for the full grant amount. The original thought was that at least 50% of the grant proceeds would be utilized for the payment of salaries. I think that's open to discussion, and one would definitely want to invite feedback from businesses on that. The idea was that we were also trying to push down some of the benefits to employees who might otherwise be furloughed, and that we do this by setting up a 3-person committee that would be comprised of 2 EDC board members and 1 city council member. The idea being there not to make it too big and cumbersome, and also to keep it at 3 rather than 4, so we don't have a locked committee, and that we give them kind of full authority to make decisions without being second guessed. And the presumption is that they really can't be wrong. We've got businesses that are in distress, all of them to a significant degree, and that we'll just defer to them to make any Solomon-esque judgments that need to be made. If we have 15 applicants and they're all equally merit-worthy, then they'll have to figure out how to divvy up the $250,000. But beyond that, I would leave it to the discretion and wisdom of the members, and I won't be one of those. We'll determine who that is. Subsequent to that, I was thinking additional qualifications. I would suggest that they've got to have a physical location, that we can't have a P.O. box business here. Again, fewer than 50 employees. That they simply provide an affidavit to us attesting to the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in reduced sales. I was thinking maybe that's of more than 20%, and or the business has been required to close or severely limit operations, because that's more of a go-forward look. If they've just been shut down in the last couple of days, they're going to be hurting, but maybe not able to demonstrate it thus far. And that, again, the magnitude of the grant just be supported with some sort of 2019 operating statement or year-to-date statement that suggests what their monthly run rate is. So, other than that, now.
Charles, do we want to
consider letting more than 10 applicants apply? 'Cause originally we said 10, 25 each, $250,000. What if we get 15? Are we gonna pick 10 or?
I would say we take all comers until the application date, and then we simply decide how to allocate funds among those applicants.
Okay.
What about, do we need the city council's approval on spending this money, or?
I'm sure we do, yes. So the hope is that they can have some sort of an emergency virtual meeting.
You can, I think I left an email up there that explains that.
Oh, okay.
Do what?
And, you know, I think it's also possible that we could go back and amend. I mean, if we determine that we had more applicants than we determined and all were
Worthy.
needy of at least 25,000, then I think we can always go back and amend, or we can look at amending it tonight. The 250 wasn't a magic number. It just, you know, we've got close to $1 million in cash at the moment. We probably have about half of that quasi spoken for rough commitments to road construction, and I mean, which is probably 18 months out.
Just made $16,000 on that today.
Right, but not our $400,000 commitment. I mean, we're a long way from spending that money, and yeah, and so we'll accrue another, you know, assuming sales taxes don't go to zero, we'll have another $240,250 over the next 12 months. So it's basically spending a year's revenue, which seems a fairly modest investment in saving our existing businesses. And I'd also failed to mention that I think at least the ones that I just did a rough calculation on, and I've missed a lot of them, obviously, I was thinking that we probably had at least $6 million in taxable sales volume among those small businesses, but it's probably north of 10. And so
It's hard to find. They make a report at the state level.
you can't get to it individually, but I can just kind of rough guess what volumes are. And so we're talking something north of $200,000 a year of revenue to the city just from sales taxes. Not that they would all disappear, but I think all are, you know, these are crazy times, and anything's possible.
Kurt's going to say that.
Yes, Mayor.
I have a couple of questions. One is, will it be held with language that only includes businesses within inside the city limits of Clear Lake Shores, not the EDC?
Yes, that was the objective, and certainly my intent, yes.
Okay, and secondly, will you be imposing any type of filter on the type of businesses? Because we have a lot of businesses, even inside part of the island, that runs out of their houses. But are you going to control it to just certain businesses that are closed due to the current order that's in place, or are you opening it up for anyone?
You know, I think the objective was, and those are good questions that get ferreted out, the objective was to have businesses that are open to the public and serving the public within Clear Lake Shores, and maybe that needs to be the clarification, that obviously if you're running a home building business out of your home office and you are shut down, that would not be
It says
well,
within the city of Clear Lake Shores is already in here, but we need to add the.
well, that the actual the business that they conduct would need to be, and maybe that's the criteria. There would have to be a sales tax revenue associated with back to the city of Clear Lake Shores. Yeah.
They're going to demonstrate the need, the financial background and all that.
Yeah. And I think that's, I think we're going to have to, and maybe we go ahead and set that criteria, that it's certainly within the city of Clear Lake Shores, not the EGJ. And that they generate taxable sales within the city of Clear Lake Shores.
Yeah. You have to have a home office within the city limits.
And
Well, Charles,
yes.
suggestion, I like the way it was worded, that half the money has to be spent on employee wages for, well, you know, employees that were furloughed because of the virus. So I think we might want to consider limiting it to companies that have employees that have been impacted and had to furlough their employees, rather
Now-
than someone working from home that's a mom and pop shop, or
Yeah.
they cut grass, or
I do, and that had been a thought that we deal with furloughed employees, but I'm struggling with that only to the extent that someone may be trying to survive, and there may be bigger priorities than trying to retain. I mean, I want to be sensitive to that, but that they're not spending their money on paying employees that really they can't afford to keep.
Yeah, some employees have made the choice to go on unemployment so they can survive this downturn.
Right.
Come back and be able to hire them back.
Yeah, and so I'm nervous about maybe displacing the unemployment, really just kind of substituting
just, yeah.
our grant money for that.
Wouldn't we just leave that up to the business?
I think that's where I'm coming, is that,
We're in
yeah.
the businesses of helping businesses, not employees of businesses. I mean, that just is a trickle down.
Yeah, I think, I kind of came to the conclusion, just for me at least, that there's not a single business owner that we're going to be granting anything to that is not about, they're not about their employees, and they're not about doing the best thing to survive, and we'll just, I would trust them to $25,000. I just don't think there's anybody that we're ultimately going to say, you get a grant that is not in that category.
Right.
And that we just leave it to their discretion.
Yeah, I mean, the fund that you're describing is something that they're gonna tap into. It might be on a monthly basis, because it may be based on year-over-year sales for that month. You know,
Right.
that's typically you're accustomed to. You're not getting that. You're not gonna get that for, I don't care what kind of business you've got, for
Right.
who knows how long.
Is
So-
it gonna be weighted though, if you have more employees in your business that?
Well, if we have to wait, I really felt like the waiting probably should be based on sales, and I did a schedule that is not final, but it could, I mean, it's certainly not final. It's just a thought. Pass those down. And it was suggesting that if you, based on your 2019 sales or your annualized January and February 2020 sales, presuming that those are pre-COVID-19, starting at $0 to $100,000 in sales, that we would make up to $5,000 available, and then we would scale that up in $2,500 increments to where you max out at, if you're doing $900,000 in volume, you qualify for the full 25 grand. Something less than that, we could scale back, and I would really almost defer this to the committee and just say, let's look at it based on what we get. You know, we may determine that the larger sales volume units have a need that's much greater than 25K, but we're kind of capped at 25, and so then and we may determine that the lower sales volume merit 25 as well, and if we've only got 8 applicants, then we give everybody the 25. If we end up with 15 applicants and 10 of them merit 25,000, then we're going to have to, you know, we're going to have to make some judgments. So.
Well, you got different kinds of businesses. I mean, you got True North, who's really opened up, so he doesn't have 19 sales.
But he could annualize what he's had.
He can annualize what he's had.
Right.
He can come up with a number.
And we could even talk about increasing the cap at this point. Again, it's just, it was a starting place for conversation. Again, I just was more nervous about thinking that we may be coming back and may need to keep some dry powder, but there was no magic in the 250.
could we maybe just wait a little bit on some of these things to see how many applicants we get, and then decide whether to cap it and how many people?
I think it'd be better to get it passed and then raise the cap at another subsequent meeting. Is that what you're saying, basically?
It's a thought.
Yeah, but if you look at, you know, China is going back to work now. I mean, I talk to China every day, and they're going back to work. you know, when do they start shutting down? Well, end of the year,
Right.
and they are, you know, they really back at work.
That's three tough
Singapore,
months.
Singapore never shut down.
Right. Yeah, so, but again, I think we could be coming back, so, I mean, all of these things, I can defer to the committee on the specific criteria, and, we can leave the number at 250 and come back and elevate the cap, or we can raise the cap now and,
You mentioned it before too, this doesn't have to be the only go at it, you know, it may be multiple, you know, we may
Right.
learn from the first one and a month later decide that we need to do this again, but change things up a little bit. And it can be based off of the applications or feedback from the applicants too.
right. Okay.
So,
Well-
go ahead.
I think whatever we do here, seeing that this is, we've never been through this before, whatever we come up with, it should be something that we can use in the future, you know,
Mhm.
hurricanes and things like that, when we're totally devastated. We need to get back to normal. So this, I guess, is an emergency action plan.
Yeah, and so it's a little bit of a working committee to, this is beta.
Right.
Yeah, we need.
1.0, yeah.
Right.
Well, I would like to amend it to say it must be a retail sales tax paying business with a physical location within the city limits of Clear Lake Shores.
I agree.
Okay, that's good. Do we want to hold at the 250 at the moment?
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah,
on
let's start with that, and then maybe the, committee could make recommendations. We could always have one more emergency meeting
Yeah.
to amend it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's appropriate in this sector, but we are going to have to identify the committee members. I know Mike had volunteered to be on. Is someone else interested in serving?
John, are you interested in doing it?
Yeah.
Well, then I think we've got our, I would, I guess if we can.
Appoint the members, yeah.
We'll amend the, motion to
Kurt's
include the
gonna-
appointment of,
But just one thing to point out too, just not to take up time on the whole thing, remember it's supposed to be a stimulus package to pump it back in to our environment to get these folks through so they can survive, so I just wanna make sure we're not delaying anything.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
And I understand the cap, that's fine, and then the folks that are gonna go and evaluate everything, but it's gotta be fast paced.
Yep.
no,
Yep.
absolutely. I think the, objective was that we get the, applications by next Friday. And then we have, made all the decisions by the following Tuesday, and then assuming we can actually get checks cut, the checks are cut on, Friday the 10th. I mean, so it is all about getting it out there
Are you
very
saying
quickly.
this coming Friday?
A week from
Week from Friday. Friday week would be the
April-
application date,
April 3rd.
April the 3rd.
You think we should speed that up a bit?
I'm happy to, yeah.
It-
I'm all about that.
I think if you had applications in by this, my suggestion is by this Friday.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I love it, I love it.
Shorten it by a week, yeah.
Well,
I can't hear what you said.
so if we could issue checks on the 3rd, all the better. Yeah, so I would amend it.
All right. So do we need to amend that?
Yes, I would suggest applications by, Friday, what is this, Friday?
So we're amending that.
27th, and then we would make decisions, by Tuesday, what's that then?
It's subject to, what about city council approval? Can y'all meet?
So we can call a meeting within an hour, so we will probably call one tomorrow to concur with this vote.
All right.
Okay.
We're gonna have to communicate this obviously a lot quicker, so what methods are we gonna communicate?
Do what?
How are we gonna communicate the grant?
Well,
is
we have
available?
Adri here with us.
She already has the press release drafted.
Is there any other method that we need to?
She is on it.
We're ready.
Right, or that's my point. I mean, but are we obligated to do anything else? We don't need to mail anything, do we? Or
And I've already spoken to John Schaefer and to what's the people with Joe Jr. Yeah, down there today, and they're very interested.
I just didn't want to make sure that we didn't have to make sure everyone that's available to.
Yeah, it needs to be publicly released.
Right, to give everyone an equal opportunity.
Does it need to be?
Yes. And the form needs to be all, you know, settled and everything like that.
We've got to develop a form, and we will work tomorrow at the top of the Avery. We will post that to Clear Lake Shore's website under the EDC page. There'll be a link there, and I don't know exactly how we're going to develop it, but we'll have it there before 5 p.m. on the week before Brunch. So, we will get that put up there. And so, if you have the internet access, I think everybody does, you should be able to go in there and get it worked out to be a fillable PDF. And you'll be having to submit some additional materials, you know, take some financial stuff to show your downturn, and write a paragraph explaining life's hardship. Report to you, and then get them back to me.
I'd be willing to help you with it.
If you have to deliver them to City Hall, you can put them in the Dropbox for payments. So you can even do it after hours, check that in the morning, night, we're close to foot traffic now at City Hall. We'll be answering our phones.
Brent, I'm applying for the SBA disaster loan for our little business, so I'd be happy to help you with the forms. They've got some. It's really actually pretty simple related to trying to get an SBA, regular loan. Is just 3 or 4 things basically, so that they can provide, and we'll have to keep the information will need to be confidential probably, like if we ask them for their sales and things like that.
Absolutely.
Brent, you're okay with having the applications go to you?
Yeah, I can collect them, that's fine.
Okay.
I'm not going, as far as, them coming to me, I'm just gonna collect them, and if you write your name and phone number on the outside of the packet, I'll call you to let you know that I've received them.
We'll
And I will give it to the committee, I won't even open it.
Well, City Council will appoint their own representative, right, guys? Okay.
Okay. Billy or John or Kimon, or Patrick, any comments in terms of you think this works for y'all as business people? Yeah. Okay.
I think it's right. The one thing is, operating statements, my accountant is, he's in his office right now. But can we, instead of an operating statement, give you, copies of our bills?
That's fine. Just, yes. Just something that, again, we, correct. I mean, again, as I said, it's just the objective here is that if your monthly burn rate, all inclusive, is $2,000 a month, you probably don't qualify for a $25,000 grant. So, but my guess is we don't have anyone in that category. So, with that, then, I don't need to reread the body of the motion on the front page, except we are amending that to say 50 or fewer employees. And with regard to the program summary on the second page, we are deleting the requirement for 50% of the grant proceeds to be utilized for the payment of salaries. We are including the requirement that the business be located, have a physical address in the city of Clear Lake Shores, not in the ETJ, that they generate taxable sales tax revenues, and that the applications be submitted by Friday, March 27th. The committee will review those and award the grants on Tuesday, April the 1st, and we will be funding those grants on Friday, April the 3rd. Tuesday's I didn't look at it. Tuesday, March 31st. Okay. And
this board doesn't need to vote on that, right? Do we need to vote on the decision of the committee?
Not on this, on the decision of the committee. Again, I think the objective and the other part here is the committee will have the authority to make those grants.
Right.
So.
Free drinks.
I'm sorry? Johnny and, Mike, so. Then based on, the motion as amended, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay? Motion passes.
Make sure nobody in
Good
Kima
stuff.
applies for that. Okay.
Thank you all very much. Meeting adjourned. Yes, okay.
Charles, I'd like to just say one thing, a little
Yeah.
announcement. We had to cancel the first Jam on Jarbo, which was, and instead of just canceling them, period, I rescheduled them for November.
Fantastic.
So
Excellent.
hopefully